Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us on our Wednesday Wellness with the Wichita Symphony. We're really excited about today's session. We've got music therapist Meg Beck joining us and Maestro Daniel Heggie again. We are going to be talking about tension and release, suspension and resolution. This is one of my favorite things in music because you can really feel the buildup, and when it finally resolves, it's such a satisfaction to experience. Speaking of that, tension, we've all probably felt a lot of tension during the last 10 months. I saw something on my Facebook feed that struck me. It said, if you are reading this, release your shoulders from your ears, unclench your jaw, and remove your tongue from the roof of your mouth. And I immediately thought, how did you know that I was all tense? And the satisfaction of relaxing everything was just so palpable. It reminded me of several pieces of music that do that same thing, or that offer that kind of satisfaction. And we're going to talk about that a little later. And Daniel's going to give some more technical descriptions about the suspension and resolutions. But first, we're going to ask our music therapist, Meg Beck, to discuss and work through this progressive relaxation technique. Meg, thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. And nice to see you, Daniel.
Great to see you.
Um, as a music therapist, we use many different types of relaxation techniques with music. Today, we're going to focus on, like Holly said, a progressive relaxation technique, where you actually tense your muscles and then release that. So it's a very tangible relaxation technique. Usually, I would talk through every part of your body separately. Like I would say, scrunch up your facial muscles, hold that, and while you exhale, release. Focusing on that letting go feeling. And then I would say, lift up your shoulders, hold that tension. And then as you exhale, release and focus on that release feeling. So today we're going to do our body as a whole. A couple other examples I thought of was a male running a sub 4-minute mile, giving it his all, and he collapses at the end. So that's a tension and release. And I also thought of college students during finals, all that tension, and then when they're over, you just sleep for days. So just two examples that came to mind. So if you would want to join me, if you're comfortable with it, just try to tense your entire body, squeeze all your muscles, your face, your shoulders, your back, your abdomen, your legs, your feet, and just feel and notice that tension. And then as you exhale slowly, just release all your muscles and focus on that letting go feeling. And we'll do that one more time. And this is something that you can get better at the more you practice it. I mean, some people, if you go through each part of the body, it would take maybe 20, 30 minutes. But we're just going to do this whole body tension again and then release. So let's tense our muscles and hold that. And then as you exhale, let go, feel that release. And that's what the music is going to be about today, tension and release.
Awesome.
So thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Meg. And Daniel, I'm going to hand it over to you because you've got the piano in front of you.
I do. Yeah, so, this sense of tension is something we're actually looking for sometimes in music because it creates drama, it creates something where we're engaged. Kind of like where Meg was saying, you purposely do this so that you can really learn how to let go. I was thinking of the most easy building blocks, for example. If I stop there, you're going to be, wait. I can't go to sleep unless you play. Oh, now we can relax. But if we were to leave it here, we're a little bit tense. This happens all the time in music where we have these tensions and then they want to resolve in one way or another. And of course, if you look through the course of of music history from Baroque period on, you'll hear something sometimes like this, where you have, where you hear that resolution, but right before it is the tension. And now if I stopped there again too, you'd be like, oh, I can't go to bed. I can't go to sleep until you finish that. So this is happening all the way through music. And if you listen to how dissonance is treated, we'll often hear it resolved later. And composers were always toying with this idea of tension and resolution to create the drama, as I said before. And as we get into romantic music, one of the greatest examples of that is, of course, when we get to about Wagner's time, where he's stretching tonality so much that the listener is just so engaged with the music itself. So that's just a short way of being able to see how these tones can actually create a sense of tension and resolution for us.
That's fantastic. I love the your description of Wagner and how he stretches that tonality over time. When I listen to Wagner, I find that it's almost like a workout. Like after I'm done with the entire piece, the entire CD, I'm like, gosh, that was exhausting, but in a good way. It's like I need a nap.
That's true. It can be very taxing, just like a workout can be, because if you're really engaged as a listener, you will notice these moments where it can create a little more tension, and that can happen with loud dynamics that go to soft dynamics. It can happen with harmony that's very closed and dissonant, you know, something like that. Or it can happen even rhythmically sometimes, where you feel like the pulse that you're anticipating is somehow blurred and you can't quite find your equilibrium with that.
Now, both Daniel and I have picked two pieces each, one for rhythmic um, tension and one for harmonic tension. Do you want to go first and share your choices?
Sure. So I actually thought of a couple things in terms of rhythmic tension. And one of those happens at the beginning of a tone poem by Richard Strauss called Till Eulenspiegel's Merry Pranks. And it's a 7-note figure that obviously with 7 notes, it doesn't fit symmetrically into a pattern. And so you cannot find where that beat is until later in the phrase. And it's part of Strauss's idea to get you to feel off balance on purpose. But an earlier example of that I want to point out is in Beethoven's Eroica Symphony. This was a blinding light that changed classical music forever. And in the first movement of the Eroica, which is all in 3/4 time, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and we're always feeling that pulse. We're always anticipating it's going to happen on 1. Suddenly, he starts to get things a little off course a little bit on purpose, and he puts these huge hammer blow chords from the entire orchestra, but they're not playing on 1. They start on 2, and then they go to 1, and then they go to 3, and then they go to 2. And so you have this incredible rhythmic dissonance of being disoriented. And for the time that happened, way back in 1804, that startled audiences, that rhythmic tension, and they were waiting for the ship to get righted again. So we can point that out a little bit later, or I can go into more in depth later, but those are a couple things that I think of immediately with rhythmic tension.
I have to say that Beethoven moment is one of my most favorite. Whenever I hear that symphony or whenever I play it, I look forward to that moment because it's entirely satisfying. It is like you say, it just kind of like spins your reality just a little bit because you're used to being in a very comfortable, predictable beat, but all of a sudden you're jarred up in your seats and you're just a little bit more like, what? Even now in 2021, it's like, what? It's cool.
It is. I feel the same way, and I've conducted that piece many times. And when I get to that spot, I just think, what a genius. How could he do that? That it feels, even after I know it, it still feels a little bit crazy. And an easy way I think of it is like, you know, when you see an optical illusion where it can be 2 different things at the same time, depending on how you decide to look at it. This is kind of the same thing, but it's kind of an aural illusion, because all of a sudden the piece sounds like it's in in duple time or 2/4, but it's not. It's still in 3. Go ahead, Meg. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, as a music therapy point of view, I have drum circles with my senior residents, and they just love the repetition, and that it is usually it's a 4-beat pattern, and it just is really lulling. And then also we do some conducting exercises to be like you, and for cardiovascular reasons. And the music has to either be in 3/4 or 4/4 or cut time. If it's in 5/4, forget it. It doesn't work for them.
Yeah, that's a little trickier because we're not anticipating that. We're usually thinking of symmetry in one way or another.
Well, that's great. Well, what harmonic suspension are you interested in sharing, Daniel?
Well, I was thinking of taking this idea of Tristan and Isolde, because this was the next blinding light that happened in classical music to change it forever was Wagner. And with the Tristan, you'll hear people sometimes talk about the Tristan chord and what that is. And kind of simply speaking, it's this, where it sounds like we don't know where that's going to go. And then it goes to, but see, that's not a resolution yet. It's almost a resolution. And so what Wagner does, instead of making this go to that, he could have, and that would have been the resolution. But instead, he goes from this unsettled chord and goes to a new place to again. So now at this point, we're still not resolved, because if we were to resolve it, it would go here. But he doesn't do that. Instead, what he does is he separates these with silences. And instead of answering the question with the tonic or the resolution, he asks another question. And so you, the listener, are listening with suspense. And then finally, he does the last one. And we still have another unresolved, because that should go here, but it doesn't. So he keeps doing this over and over again. And finally, after he does this and goes, and then we're still tense. Now we have some resolution. And we all take our breath, but then he goes right on. And he doesn't let us rest too long. So this is going on throughout the opera, and it's to show this kind of tension and almost resolution, and then a little more tense. And then, so he's just keeping us there all the time. And it's a device that many composers have used, and Wagner was one of the first to take it to this level, where you really felt like you were being tugged along and you're longing for that resolution, and you finally do get it. But you have to wait about 5 hours.
But you earned it when you do get it. You know you got it.
It's true.
Yeah.
And that's why I think listening to music can be so gratifying. If you're a really active listener, you can be picking up on all that.
Well, each of those pieces that you recommend, we're going to share YouTube links for, so that people can hear the chord progressions and the Beethoven repeated chords. So those will be included. My choices, first of all, I'm going to pick the Prokofiev Romeo and Juliet, the very opening, for my harmonic kind of tension release, the suspensions that build. This was one of the first pieces that I heard live, a live orchestra playing, and it blew my mind because of the special effect that I'll share with you. The piece starts off with a single note, and then it layers another note and another note and another note. So it's just like this very dissonant chord. And then the whole orchestra screams at you, basically. But meanwhile, the violins and some of the strings have this very quiet line. And so after that scream stops, you're left with this line, this very soft, beautiful, calm line. Probably, maybe it's Romeo and Juliet, and beforehand it's just the two big families. So it could be that kind of metaphor. But then all of a sudden, that chord structure starts to build and build and build again, and then the orchestra screams at you again. And it filled me with such, just like, I was on the edge of my seat. This is the first piece on the program. I'm already sweating. And where is it going to go? And it leads right into this march. And to me, that kind of resolution where you're kind of left, where is this going? I've just screamed at, and then I had this little resolution with the strings, and then this march comes. It's a very defiant kind of march, very determined. It has purpose, it has direction. So you've got a lack of direction and then direction. So there's a number of kind of resolutions that happen within the first 5 minutes of this entire work. And for my rhythmic suspension and resolution, this is kind of, I almost didn't want to share it, but I love this piece so much, and it had me on the edge of my seat when I listened to it. I never have heard this live. I would love to play it or love to hear it live. And I heard it on the radio, and the radio announcer said, "The relentless snare drum will keep you on the edge of your seat." And I thought, well, that sounds cool. I like snare drums. And so this piece, it's the Nielsen Symphony 5. The first movement starts off, and it's just kind of like you see in the distance, like storm clouds building, but then this chaos erupts, and this snare drum, which they are instructed in their part to play over the orchestra as loudly as possible. You just feel this urgency, and then it decays, and it comes back, and it decays, and it comes back, and then there's certain instruments in the orchestra that pick up these little da 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 da, and you never know who's going to have it, and the whole thing kind of comes to an end, and then the second movement just blossoms. You just feel this ultimate relief. Now, I'll leave the time marks to listen to. If you don't have a lot of time, if you only have 15 minutes, I'll mark that. If you've got a good half hour, listen to the whole symphony, because it's a lot like what Daniel had mentioned with the Wagner. It's 36 minutes, not 5 hours, but when you get to that final bit, you know you earned it. You've gone through a lot of tension and release, tension, release, tension, release, and then finally that final chord is just so satisfying. So it's the Nielsen Symphony 5. The snare drum is the star, and it's just exhilarating to feel that. And for me, that's the rhythmic tension that we talked about.
And I'm thinking about film composers. Think how much tension and release they have in their music.
Definitely.
And it wouldn't be very satisfying to watch a film with no music.
Oh, right.
Definitely. I think people aren't aware of that unless they had some device to turn down all the sound of just the music itself and still hear the dialogue. They'd say something's really empty. And film composers are geniuses at being able to sense tension before something's going to happen, to help you anticipate it and to make it even better. So you're absolutely right, Meg.
And we just had George S. Clinton on our last episode, who was talking. We were just talking with him afterwards, and he was talking about this very thing, about an action cue, and then all of a sudden the relief cue. The music has to go from very action and urgent to almost like let the audience know this is great, this just resolved. So the action cue, the relief cue, and it's changed the way that I've enjoyed movies. I now kind of listen to the music even more than I normally did. So it's been kind of fun. But I think we're going to wrap this up pretty soon. We're going to have all the links to the pieces that both Daniel and I suggested. And I'll try to find a link for the progressive relaxation technique if you'd like to try that a little more extensively. We're going to do a part 2 of this. We're going to look at tension and release differently in our next one of our next episodes. But in the meantime, if you're feeling like you want to hear a full hour or just a little bit more, let the symphony know, and we will, Daniel and I will talk for an hour if you like, about certain pieces, and we can do a little more deep dive in some of the harmonic issues of this. suspension and resolution, because there is a lot of really cool stuff. So just let the symphony know and we'll get that going for you. So in the meantime, I hope you enjoy the selections, and I hope it leads you down some fun rabbit holes and discovery of some really great pieces. So thank you, Meg, and thank you, Daniel. And we're looking forward to our next offering. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you.